We have a very illustrious list of panelists from different walks of life with various special and long-standing experience. Without much further ado, I'd like to start with the introductions. Our first speaker has been a career diplomat and was previously the Director General of the Department for Africa and Middle East at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and has previously served as Finland's ambassador in Israel, and also worked at the diplomatic missions in Brussels, Canberra, Athens, and Budapest. Please welcome Her Excellency Ms. Leena Kaisa-Mikkola, Ambassador of Finland to China. Our next speaker has joined UNFPA in 2006 as the Deputy Regional Director for East and Southern Africa, and has previously held the Regional Director role for Asia at MSI Reproductive Choices. She has worked in Asia, Latin America, and Africa across a broad portfolio of development issues. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Justine Coulson, UNFPA Representative to China. Moving on, we have Mr. Matteo Marchisio, Country Director in the Asia and Pacific Division at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD. Mr. Marchisio has previously been the IFAD Country Program Manager for China and Mongolia out of Rome, and has been Country Program Manager for Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and also has experience at the World Bank and UNDP in the climate change environmental space. Then we have Mr. Wang Chunyi, Executive Vice President and Research Fellow at the China Ecological Civilization Research and Promotion Association. Mr. Wang has more than 10 years of experience in the research of ecological civilization theory and culture, policies, and systems. He has participated in 10 consecutive sessions of the National II sessions and provided suggestions and proposals which have gone to the State Council. Then we have Ms. Peng Yijie, President of Social Good and Green Development at Ant Group. Ms. Peng has served as Vice President and General Manager of the International Business Group and laid the foundations of Alipay's international businesses. She was also the product founder of AliExpress. And then last but not the least, we have Dr. Hu Yun Kun, Research Fellow at the Institute for Global Health and Development at Peking University. She has a PhD in Women's Studies, was a Fulbright Scholar at Columbia University, and an Adjunct Associate Professor at Griffith University. And she has held specialist roles for UNFPA, WHO, UNDP, and UN Women. Please join me in welcoming all the panelists to our panel. I'd like to start off with Her Excellency. Finland has been one of the forerunners in promoting gender equality and women's empowerment in both policy and practice. All ministries are required to systematically include a gender perspective in their key processes, particularly budgeting, performance management, and law drafting. Can you share Finland's experience and lessons learned on gender-responsive climate policies and gender-responsive budget allocations?
I hope this mic is on. And thanks for everybody for inviting me and my colleague Heidi to this event. And to all of us, of course, I'd like to wish Happy International Women's Day. Hope it's a good day also for every man here. It's a great honor for me to take part in this panel with so many distinguished experts. And I myself, I'm a general diplomat, so my short comments are also rather general in nature. So when discussing gender and climate policies in relation to Finland, I would like to shortly share Finland's experiences on two levels, both the national and international. Nationally, Finland has set ambitious goals for both climate change and gender equality. Our government has indicated that it's our target to become carbon neutral by 2035, and we would then be the world's first fossil-free welfare society. Also, Finland, together with other Nordics, and I suppose I might be repeating something that my good friend and colleague Helena here said, we have also been pioneering in building a gender equal society. And I think we've been quite successful, especially in political level and public domain. Half of our ministers and about half of our parliamentarians are women. Most of the civil servants are women. But recent Nordic studies and discussions show that women's share in political decision-making does not automatically mirror in more gender-responsive climate policies. So that needs to be carefully looked at, while without active gender perspective, there is a risk that our goal to build this carbon-neutral society will not be efficient nor sustainable. An example, men still make up the majority in the science and technology education, and thus they dominate the sectors of the new green economy, be it energy, transport, agriculture or construction. All respect to male scientists and practitioners, but it's important to make sure that women's perspectives are not missed out when designing future solutions. Increasing education of women for male-dominated sectors is something that has been recommended in a report published by our Ministry of Economy last autumn, and this is also an issue that has been discussed at the level of Nordic Ministerial Council. All in all, even though I think we have progressed well, the effects on climate change and climate policy on gender have not yet been studied enough, not even in Finland. But the importance has been recognized and the work is ongoing. We, of course, in the embassy here would be interested in hearing more on the gender responsiveness in the ongoing, how is the ongoing work here in China, as China is working towards its own goal of achieving carbon neutrality. A word on our policies on the international level. We have made both gender equality and climate change cross-cutting goals in our development cooperation. For example, 85% of the new development programs must include actions that promote gender equality. So to support green transition is something that we emphasize in our development policy and projects. And it's also important to make sure that everyone will benefit from better access to green energy. According to our analysis so far, our bilateral development cooperation in that field has in most cases benefited in particular the women. However, also on this level, more studies and analysis are still needed. Maybe more on a personal note, there was a recent report of IPCC just some days ago, and it was in the Finnish media. Half of the page was about the war in Europe, and half of the page was about this IPCC very alarming report about the climate change. So I think that there are quite a few existential fights that we need to tackle in a global level, and I think it's both for women and men to take proactive role in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Moving on to Ms. Coulson. Research suggests that climate change will increasingly affect the health of vulnerable populations, including maternal and fetal health. One study has shown that increases in temperature in the weeks before delivery corresponded with an increase in the likelihood of stillbirth. Can you elaborate more on the intersections between climate change and sexual and reproductive health and rights of women?
Great. Thank you, Bharat. And, I was just thinking as I was in the car coming here today that the last time I was here at CCG was the week after COP26. And I'd been asked to talk about the interlinkages between climate change and health more generally. And on that day, I made the point that actually health is very often overlooked in general discussions around climate change and climate adaptation, both in terms as a series of negative health outcomes from climate change, but also as a critical investment for a greener future. Now today, as Bharat said, I've been asked to talk specifically about the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls in climate change. And unfortunately, these specific needs, these specific rights, this specific subsection of health is even more overlooked when we start talking about climate action and climate policies. So I'm conscious I have 5 minutes and 3 points to convince everybody in this room and all of our viewers online why it is critical that we put sexual and reproductive health and rights at the heart of all climate action, and why we can't actually achieve the vision of International Women's Day, which as you know is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow, without prioritising this investment. So to my first point, and I think Berat started to touch on this, there is now very, very clear evidence on the impact that climate change is having on the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls all around the world. And I don't have time to cover all of that evidence, but just as an example, there's evidence of the negative impact of increased heat, increased air pollution on maternal and neonatal health. So we can see higher rates of miscarriage, higher preterm births, and poorer neonatal outcomes. And we have to remember that these are all areas where we've made incredible progress since the beginning of the MDGs, and we're really very much at risk of falling back on that progress that we've made. When we look at the broader package of essential SRHR services, we know that extreme weather events caused by climate change can severely disrupt health services with a negative impact on SRHR. So when that disruption comes, there's a lack of supplies, lack of skilled staff, maybe lack of household resources even to pay for transport to go and get those services. And all of these impacts can result in women and adolescent girls experiencing issues such as unintended pregnancies, increased new HIV infections, and pregnancy complications. We really also must not forget that climate change also leads to higher levels of gender-based violence and harmful practices. And UNFPA's own research has found that issues such as sex trafficking, intimate partner violence, and child marriage all increase after extreme weather events all across the world, regardless of cultural context. And there are many, many other studies that support this. So to my second point, it really is that we cannot achieve gender transformation nor gender equality without realising the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls. And so this means if we're going to have gender responsive climate action, and if it's really going to effectively address gender inequalities, it really needs to integrate a comprehensive approach to addressing sexual and reproductive health and rights. We also need to acknowledge that the realisation of sexual and reproductive health and rights is actually an important pathway for building resilience and adaptive capacity to climate change in families and communities. And it's critical for enabling women and girls to fully engage with climate action. So as a cornerstone of resilience, SRHR enables women and girls to better realise their human rights, to make choices that best suit their personal circumstances and protect themselves and their communities from harm. And so leaving SRHR behind in the global response to climate change would really further entrench existing gender equalities. So we have two lots of evidence. We have a bucket of evidence, if you like, that very clearly shows that the SRHR of women and girls is negatively affected by climate change. And on the other side of that, we have very clear evidence that shows an investment in the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women and girls is a critical investment for greater resilience of communities. And yet, and I think actually Beate started to touch on this in her intervention, most current climate policy documents completely overlook SRHR. Absolutely no reference. So, for example, in a recent review of national adaptation plans, only 50% contained even one reference to SRHR. And our own research at UNFPA shows that whilst almost all nationally determined contributions, and those are the sort of national climate action plans that are developed under the Paris Agreement, so of those NDCs, whilst almost all of them contain references generally to public health, we found that most of the NDCs from our own programme countries contain no reference to sexual and reproductive health at all. And this is very often in countries that have actually stood up for what we call the ICPD agenda, the International Conference on Population and Development agenda, that very much is for SRHR. So looking forward, if we are to meet the goals under the Paris Agreement on gender responsive climate action, and if countries such as China that really have positively committed to a people-centred approach to tackling climate change are really going to achieve that vision, We really have to ensure that sexual and reproductive health and rights for women and girls is fully integrated into all aspects of national climate policies and plans as part of a broader investment in the well-being, empowerment and equality of women and girls in the context of climate change. And I hope with those 3 points, I have convinced you all that we must never, ever forget SRHR when we start thinking about climate action for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coulson. I was very convinced. We move on to Mr. Matteo Marchisio. Mr. Marchisio, IFAD has funded a range of activities targeting the gender and climate nexus and released several publications on the issue. Taking the UN Women supported position that women are not merely vulnerable victims of climate change, but also have the capacity and knowledge to become active agents of adaptation and mitigation. This is a position that was also highlighted by His Excellency Mr. James Kimonyo earlier in the Rwanda case. Reflecting on IFAD's in-country and global experiences, can you share your perspective on allocating loans for targeted interventions on gender and climate change?
Sure, and thank you very much, Birat, UN Women, and CCG for inviting me to share my views on this very important topic, gender and climate change, and to be, to a certain extent, presented as a champion or an advocate of these topics. Not only because these are really at the core of the mandate of my organization, International Fund for Agricultural Development, but also for my personal history. And I take a minute, as Dr. Schengen-Fan did, to share a bit my background. I grew up as a child of divorced parents. So I grew up with my mother, my maternal grandmother, with my 2 sisters, a female dog and a female cat. In a country, Italy, that is not as advanced as Sweden, as Rwanda, as Finland in terms of gender empowerment. We always score towards, the middle bottom in all the gender rankings for our country. So I experienced, I saw how my family, my sister, my dearest, face challenges in their daily life in a country like Italy. So I'm always very pleased and proud to speak about the gender empowerment, gender transformation, and to champion this topic. So now let me go back to your question. And you rightly said, I will not repeat, but women, why it's important to talk about women and climate change, because women are both victims but potentially actors of change in addressing this topic. And I was trying to, think at 4 ways in which we can empower women so that they can become agent of change in terms of climate change. And the first way, as obvious as it could be, is to listen to women. Women represent half of the world agriculture workforce. In China, in many rural areas where we work, they represent 70 to 80% of the agricultural workforce. They know the landscape, they know the resources, they know the biodiversity of the environment in which they work. So if you want to have solution, you better listen to them. So it's important to be able to consult them. And let me give you a few examples of how IFAD involve women in, for instance, planning, ensuring that women knowledge is captured in informing climate change adaptation strategy. In Sudan, for instance, a region where women have historically been disadvantaged and marginalized, IFAD supports women to come together in informal groups, builds their leadership skills, and provide networks through which they can act as leaders. The second way by which women can be empowered and play a key role in addressing climate change is by reducing women workload. Women carry a number of heavy duties. And this leaves them with little time and little energy to actually participate in the decision-making process they are part of. Very little time to develop their own business, so they have little economic power. Again, if we want to give them the opportunity to participate actively in the decision-making processes, we have to reduce their workload. Again, let me give you a couple of examples from IFAD experience worldwide. One is more technological solution in Brazil. IFAD introduced a cost-effective equipment that reduced the processing time for nutrition fruit from days to a matter of hours. This was a task that was carried out by women, and by simply reducing, through the introduction of a simple technology, the time that the women allocate to that task, they could free up time for other activities. The second one is a bit more, it's not a technology, it's more an approach to the methodology. We, IFAD, promote what we call the household methodology, by which, through a series of dialogue between women and men of the same household, and from the household to the same community, they discuss, through a series of questions, about allocation of resources, allocation of assets, constraints and traditional gender norms. By simply facilitating this dialogue, by triggering this discussion among the household and community, we observed that we are able to break some of the social norms, or if not breaking, at least have the communities reflecting on some of the factors that constrains women participation and women contribution to the life and the economy of the community. And the result has been powerful, both in terms of agricultural productivity, but also in terms of participation of women to the economy and the decision-making of their community. Third, investment in women economic growth. Women economic empowerment does not just benefit women themselves. I think this was mentioned in the initial statement. It positively benefits the household, and it positively benefits the community. So it is good for the household and for the community to provide economic opportunity to women. And this can be achieved by, of course, training, capacity building, but also addressing some of the institutional constraints for women to exert such power, like land rights, access to land, access to finance. This was mentioned earlier. So addressing those constraints would allow women to have a better role, to exert a better economic role, and thus have more voice in the community. The last point is a bit more tricky. It relates to break the social norms and the social barriers that hold women back. It's a bit more tricky because the solution is not straightforward. It's not by providing trainings or encouraging participation that you address those norms. It's much more embedded in society, and it takes much more time and much more effort to break this rule. I like very much the point that the ambassador from Rwanda made. In order this to make happen, there is a need for a strong will, political will, for this to happen. And I think this is somehow the message that I would like to convey. There are a number of barriers, challenges, constraints that we can address by better designing our projects, by introducing approaches, technologies that empower women. But in the end, there is a need of a political will, of the will of the leadership to make this happen. So I stop here, and I thank you very much again for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Mr. Wang Chunyi. Mr. Wang, given the existential threat of climate change, many have called for a comprehensive social and environmental reform one that leads to an ecological civilization. In China, President Xi Jinping has indicated that the construction of an ecological civilization is a great plan for the sustainable development of the Chinese nation. Can you define the ecological civilization and highlight how women could participate, contribute, and equally benefit from the process from a policy perspective?
Thank you for the question. I'd like to sincerely thank for this invitation for me to attend this seminar. To me personally, this is a very good opportunity to learn. And I personally feel that today, this is a very special day. The gender equality, biodiversity, climate change mitigation, and addressing the climate change, all of these matters come together. This is very necessary to talk all of them at this special day. So for this question, I cannot actually frame a very complete answer within 5 minutes. I have to identify myself because I'm engaged mainly with the policies, measures, to give the plans, advices to the government. So by China's rhetoric, probably we will be very general in terms of making the measures or giving the advices, but actually general measures and advices are also equally important. The equality of gender or the females' roles and measures being done to improve the status of the female. Right now, we have to look at the way of thinking. The enhancement of the awareness is very necessary, but actually right now it's a very tricky task. Means that philosophy determines the future direction of the development, and philosophy determines the future direction of the actions. Ecological civilization is one of the critical contributions to the sustainable development of the world. It's very complicated. Since 2017, the 17th CPC Congress all the way to the 19th CPC Congress, during this period of time, this philosophy come into being and defined. So I want to frame this concept from the cultural perspective. Actually, ecological civilization is delineating the concept from the cultural perspective and the benevolence, both to the nature and people. So in the 12th five-year plan articles, we have to protect the environment, protect the humanity, and protect the sustainable development of the world. The planet Earth is the only home that we can have for humankind. So as females, which is different from men, because female or women are a very important system because it has the role and responsibility to produce and to regenerate the offspring. So the difficulties in front of the females are more demanding. The former premier, Vice Premier Jiang Chunyin used to say, currently, the planet Earth right now is not something that we carried on from our ancestors, but what we borrow from our future generations, and we have to return a beautiful, healthy, sustainable planet Earth to our future generations, especially female. So it means that we have to do something that we feel not sorry for our ancestors, but at the same time we should also feel grateful for them. At the same time, we have to do something for our future generations. Means that, just like President Xi mentioned, that it is the matter of the harmony between human beings and nature. So this is actually the philosophical definition of ecological civilization. And the second idea is that China's definition of ecological civilization is the presentation made by China about our concept and our wisdom of the sustainable development to the world. In 2018 and 2019, for these 2 years, I was attending the the World Civilization Forum, and I was telling the world that the ecological civilization was proposed by China but belongs to the world. and something that needs to be done by the world at the same time. And I'd like to elaborate a little bit on the third part. The civilization of China as well as the ecological civilization actually coincide with each other and intertwined with each other, ecologically speaking. That's why the proposal made by President Xi of the community of the shared future for human beings is actually the pillars to support this ecological civilization. So sustainable development lays on the foundation for China's ecological civilization to go global, which has been acknowledged by the world right now. From 2013, UN has released the promotion articles and declarations and resolutions on China's green development and a green development plan, as well as the Ecological Civilization initiative by China. So these two articles actually are the acknowledgement of China's philosophy, although they are not equal to each other, but by nature they are equivalent to each other. So I think that China's ecological civilization is more extensive versus sustainable development defined by UN, because it defines everything, all elements in the system. And the third question about a female, about women in the world. The status quo faced by women is very arduous due to the political constraints, the social levels, as well as the different costumes and the social backgrounds. So in China, I believe after several decades of the development since founding of the PRC, especially after the opening and reforms, we are very happy and also fortunate to have a female to participate into this whole process. So I have reported what we can do, and there are two areas that we can do something about. The first award is the China Civilization Award that has been approved by the State Council and the central government. We have been giving this award for 2 consecutive years. There are 93 people and a female. 22 of them are women. 25% of the award winners are female. So I believe that the contributions made by female and women are actually very solid and very strong. So in UK, I was working in Schumack Institute. I was looking at their communities for my research purposes, and I have noticed that most of them are female researchers. I'm the only one in the team, man in the team. And when I returned to my community doing the research, I was dedicated in the inclusion of the female into my team of research as well. Due to that experience that doing in UK, and I've been looking at the jobs that they can do, like they can be the bakers and they can be many other professionals. Also, the second award is the annual green person of the greenness, which is very also meaningful in China. Every 2 years, we will award 10 people, and every year we have to give into consideration of all of these candidates for future elimination. And the third issue is that we have to do something to facilitate the participation of females' participation into future decision-making course. Empowerment and capacity building is very important. What does it mean? It means that we have to promote, we have to publicize, we have to advertise the roles of the women. If the officials do not pay attention to this very much, then nothing will be done very quickly and efficiently. So it means that we have to mobilize all kinds of officials and all kinds of political wills and also resources, and we have to convince our officials to give the preferential policy to support this course. Means that we have to formulate the mainstream concept and philosophy in which the females' rights and participation has to be mainstreamed to participate into the decision-making as the mainstream in the future. And that also needs to be supported by the officials and by the public will. So the empowerment means that which can be defined by a legislature. And clearly it's stipulated by the legislature articles that the women has legitimate rights to participate into the decision-making and into certain institutions and so on and so forth. So the pressure is on females. It's very arduous. They are highly stressful. So we have to arrange a set of institutions to facilitate women to get into or engaged into this whole process, because otherwise they will have no ground to support. Purely relying on societal support is not enough. The third one is that we have to enhance the capacity building for the women's, and let's just say too much about it because I'm behind the schedule. No, still 1 minute left. That's good. So let me finish. I'd like to share with you some example for Chinese women participating to ecological civilization. It can be dated back to many, many years ago. Niu Yuqing, probably know her. And she is a very, very important person for counter desertification. Well, in the households, in order to protect the very precious species of crane, 2 of the family members sacrificed their lives. And the daughter of Xu Xiujuan graduated from university, used to be working in University of Agriculture, but asked for it to be transferred to do the research in biodiversity and the protection of these endangered species. So the whole members of the family have been dedicated and devoted into the protection of the environment and the biodiversity. So to me personally, I think we deeply feel that we have to do something to protect the rights of these families and its female people. Also, President Xi last year, when he was visiting Sehamba, and I think the spirit of Sehamba has been formulated since then. And that is also the ground that we can rely on to help the female to withstand those challenges by relying on these capacities have been built up.
From the point of view of my organization, we will also give strong support to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peng. We move on to Ms. Peng. Ms. Peng, whether it is through targeted marketing campaigns supporting rural farmers or providing digital upskilling solutions to close digital gaps, Ant Group has been active in supporting common prosperity and rural revitalization in China. Can you highlight the role the private sector can play in the intersection of gender and climate change?
Okay, thank you. It's really an honor to be here. Like Mr. Fan, Professor Fan said, so it should be a beautiful afternoon. All the ladies take the leave, but I'm very happy. My department, all the women, they take leave this afternoon. But I think it's very meaningful to be here. It's not like a job. It's like a sharing journey. Thank you for arranging this event. So at Ant Group, our growth path has been guided by our conviction that technology innovation can be used to benefit society. For example, in August 2016, we introduced Ant Forest, a green initiative within the Alipay app, which encourages users to take greener activities in life, such as paying utility bills online and taking public transportation instead of driving, and a lot on. So within 5 years, over 600 million people have joined the Ant Forest, helping reduce 20 million tons of carbon emission by their green actions. As a reward to all the Ant Forest users, Ant Group had planted over 326 million trees in more than 10 provinces in China, and also had provided fund support to 18 biodiversity conservation areas, which provides the ideal habitat for over 1,500 species. So women play a very significant role in the Ant Forest Green Initiative. So I'm going to share 2 stories. So first, in Ant Forest tree planting projects, actually there are more women than men. Because men in the family usually leave to find better paying jobs in remote cities, while women stay to look after the farmland and children. So the climate change has caused serious influence to their daily life. That is why the local women love to join in forest tree planting projects. The projects not only help them improve local environment, but also provides a way for women to increase their income, which is a key factor for empowerment. So for example, Ms. Yang Shenghua is a 58-year-old villager in Gansu province, Dunhuang. So one of the areas really suffering from the desertification. So she signed up to work as a tree planter in 2019. Within the income, she was able to pay for her husband's medical bills without having to leave him to find work, and was able to continue to pursue her dream of writing poems in her spare time. Actually, she's a poetess. So we are so pleased to see many women's life has been changed, not only because of environmental improvement, but also from women empowerment. So secondly, we notice that more and more women has taken a leader role in forest biodiversity conservation projects. Another example is Ms. Qiu Shi is the first women chief leading a female team, a totally female team of rangers, 巡护员 rangers, so patrolling China's white tiger conservation areas in Heilongjiang province. So this actually, even to men, considered to be a very dangerous and a challenging job. But this lady lead a whole female team and did a fantastic job. So this is another demonstration, how women like Ms. Cho proved that women can do just as good in becoming inspiring leaders. So going forward, and will continue to create opportunities in economic empowerment and leadership for women through our public good initiatives, including those on environmental protection and biodiversity conservation. So, and is always believing women power, she power. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bum. Last but not the least, Dr. Hu Yukun. Dr. Hu, earlier at the start of our session, Mr. Li Gao, the Director General of the Ministry of Ecology and Environment, underlined the importance of gender in climate change policies. Dr. Hu, having authored a few publications on topics such as gender, natural resources management, and the Chinese state, as well as looking at gender and the ecological civilization, can you explain how women can be empowered to adapt to climate change in rural China?
Okay, thank you, Bright. Dear friends and colleagues, good afternoon. I am extremely honored to participate in the roundtable discussions, and I'm going to focus particularly on why women's role and leadership is key to climate adaptation in Lulu China. Lulu women already are playing a leading role in coping with climate change. As more and more men living for the cities, Lulu China has long witnessed the feminization of agricultural labor, and therefore the feminization of nature resource management. In most areas, women make up about 17% of Lulu labor force. Obviously, Lulu women are on the front line of climate change. They depend heavily on natural resources for their livelihoods. This group of marginalized people are particularly sensitive and vulnerable to negative impacts of climate change and climate-induced risks. Poor women and girls in the countryside are among those worst hit by climate change and climate-induced nature disasters and poverties. So this is not due to their inherent vulnerability, but as a result of gender inequalities in the political, social, and economic fields, which intersect with other aspects of social disadvantages, such as gender and age. And as a result, Lulu women have substantially less access to a variety of productive resources, such as land, fertilizer, seeds, financial services, weather information, and agriculture technologies because of social norms and unequal power relations. All this make them and their livelihood more vulnerable to economic and environmental shocks. Notably, women's role and leadership in addressing climate change are weakened by various barriers within the household and at the community levels due to a variety of unequal factors. As you know, in many village committee and party benches are almost totally comprised of men, and women's voices are mostly excluded from the policy-making process, and that affect their daily life. The absence of Lulu women's participation and voices in local decision-making means that their needs and concerns are often ignored. Let me give an example. When I did a group interview in the Yunnan province, this village is hit by flood, and all the participant men, no one mentioned about the bridge damaged by flood, and all women take the fixing of the bridge as the #1 priorities. However, Lulu women are already leading their own solutions to the interrelated challenges of climate adaptation and gender equalities. Many left-behind women actually play a key role in crafting the solutions. The fourth survey on Chinese women's social status, organized by All China Women's Federation in 2020, indicated that the proportion of Lulu women in employed was 73.2%, and among them, 37.8% of Lulu women have migrant work experiences. This means Lulu Chinese women are well positioned to contribute to adaptation strategies, particularly in terms of their traditional knowledges, skills, and experiences in food production and management of nature resources. So obviously, gender equality and women's empowerment are crucial to more effectively, equitably, and sustainable achieving climate adaptation, improving agro biodiversity, transforming food systems, and alleviating poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am just looking around to see if we have time for follow-up questions or if we should be moving on to the next session. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, speakers, we had you prepare for the follow-up questions, but due to timing limitations, we'll probably have to wrap it up for this panel. Can we please have a big round of applause for all of our speakers? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all very much. So I will actually chair the next section. So it's really a great honor for me to do this service. Actually, is really extremely privileged. And also, first of all, I would like to congratulate all the ladies, the International Women's Day. I thank Samriti for giving us the opportunity that we can co-organize this with UN Women. And of course, we were quite impressed. Actually, we are having all the impressive list of people, actually, speakers coming today. We had, 4 UN organizations. We have 3 ambassadors. We have 3 ministry representatives, and we have academia, think tank, philanthropists. Now we're going to have businesswoman. So my section is going to chair the businesswoman, which is also fascinating development in China on the gender balance, and also, of course, the climate change. I was told by my staff we have over 300,000 viewers online, actually, through different channels and YouTube, Facebook, and also, of course, in China, Baidu, and many other. So watching us, and so we can, of course, this program is going to be replayed again after we have finished. So I'd like to start to introduce our next panel speakers. So there will be six of them. Mr. Dong Ruiping, she's the Vice President of Government Affairs, Herbalife China. Ms. Li Ye, Vice President of Government Affairs, Merck China. Ms. Roberta Lipson, founder and CEO, United Family Hospital. Ms. Margaret Ding, Chairman of Asia Pacific Corporate and Investment Banking, and Chairman at the Bank of America, China. And also Ms. Miranda Wong, Managing Director, ETS China, and Ms. Jenny Zhen, Managing Partner, MSC Capital. So just to follow the pattern, I will briefly introduce each speaker briefly, so that we get an idea what the sectors they are in and how they can really contribute to our topic. Ms. Ruiping Dong, the first panelist, Ruiping Dong joined Herbalife Nutrition in January 2018 and the Vice President of Corporate Affairs for Herbalife China. Before joining Herbalife Nutrition, she worked for ITT, the predecessor of XM, and also had nearly 15 years leadership experience in external affairs. And before that, she was responsible for business development for Amazon China and Ford China. And Ms. Li Ye is the leading Merck, is leading the Merck China Corporate Affairs hub in support all the 3 business sectors: healthcare, life science, performance material of the Merck China since also January 2018. The China hub is among 3 regional corporate affairs hubs, Europe, United States, and China, of Merck KJ Global Wide. She's a member of the leadership team of Merck Global Corporate Affairs and sits on the country council for Merck China. And we have our third panelist, Roberta Lipson. She has 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry in China. So that's a very long history. Since she co-founded the Chindex in 1981, the company has expanded from its business of capital medical equipment distribution to healthcare delivery. She's the creative force behind the United Family Healthcare brand and its hospital and clinics in Beijing, Shanghai, Tianjin, Guangzhou, and Wuxi. And United Family is the first foreign investment and managed private health group in China. And then we have Ms. Zhen, Margaret Zhen. She has more than 25 years of experience in investment banking, is one of the most experienced Chinese investment banker for China's financial industries enterprise and have deep understanding, established a closer cooperation with customers and also every participant in the Greater China region landmark deals before joining the bank Merrill Lynch. She's also used to be the French bank BNP Paribas and the corporate finance chairman, and also the chairman of the investment bank at Merrill Lynch. And also we have Miranda Wong. Ms. Miranda Wong is the managing director of ETS China, a wholly owned subsidiary of Educational Testing Service, as the world's largest private education testing and measurement organization. ETS is for TOEFL, GRE, and many tests that conducted around the world. And finally, last but not least, we have Jenny Zheng. Jenny Zheng has 20 years of investment and technology operation experience. Before founding MSA, Jenny was the first executive director of China Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. And she founded the Maple Valley Investment in 2004, one of the first financial advisory investment banking groups in China. Jenny has been the investor in many market-leading companies in China, such as Meituan, NIO, BGI, Yidukao, and Boss Zhaopin. You know, we see a lot of advertisement lately during the Olympics that was invested by Jenny as well. So that's, I think, what we have. But the question actually I would like to conduct on this panel, it will be 3 questions. So we hope that our panelists will take a note. What does the multi-stakeholder partnership look like for advancing gender equality and climate change environment? So that's question number 1. Number 2, what is the unique opportunity for strengthening partnerships in and with China to further this agenda? And thirdly, what is one takeaway recommendation you have for all of us to advance gender equality in climate change and environment space? So because all of you are management position, and you are also the women in leadership, so I'm very, very pleased that our discussion today cannot be really concluded without the business community's voice that well represented here. So perhaps I'll just start according to this alphabetic order. So Ms. Dong, why don't you share your view first? We'll limit this to 3 to 5 minutes, and because we're getting late. Thank you.
I'd like to thank UNW and the CCG for giving me this opportunity. I'm coming from the Herbalife. I'd like to share with you, last year, we began engaged on the report for sustainable development. We are actually draw a line between us and the SDG targets. We believe that what we've been doing versus the 70 SDG, the gap is very little and very limited. I want to talk about the 3 SDGs. The first one is the SDG 8, which is about the economic growth, and the target 5 goal 5, which is the gender equality, and the zero starvation. So I'd like to talk about the sustainable development of the enterprises as a perspective to talk about the role played by female in the SG. We think that women, in terms of sustainable development, can play a very big role. The females, in front of the climate change, they're very fragile and very sensitive. So talking about the security, especially the health security, they also care very much about the health, and they are the main customers of a lot of health supplements and nutrition products. So in terms of the climate change and sustainable development, the empowerment of female is very important, because in this regard, female can empower by their empowered power to these sectors as well. So for us, we can do a lot. For example, in terms of resource and water and sustainable renewable energies, to mitigate and reduce the influences and the negative impacts of the activities done by human beings. So in our organizations, we have done some actual campaigns. From the societal perspective, the Herbalife is a nutrition products producers and supplier. So in China, we are the independent providers and distributors of our products. So our initiative is EI, representing diversification, equality, and inclusiveness. This is our corporate culture, DEI. So in our promotion campaigns, 70% of the participants are women, and our employees, 60+% are female employees, and me in the management, 60% are featuring females. So in our organization and our company, we're promoting equality or gender equality and inclusive corporate culture. And from the BNI perspective, I believe female are more responsible and more patient and more caring in promoting the internal innovations of the organization. And they can be a very good enabler for the innovation and development of the company. From the responsibility perspective, we've also have been participated into a lot of campaigns of ESG to influence some people, especially women. But of course, our businesses are kind of encouraging the entrepreneurship as part of our corporate culture. And right now we are in the 2 sessions process. There are 6 stability and 6 guarantee policies in China. And we are encouraging the general public to do businesses and to be more innovative and entrepreneurship. So in this regard, we hope that through empowering the female, women could be enabled and encouraged to initiate their own businesses, which could enable the enhanced development of the society as a whole. So our suggestion, in the starting their businesses, well, the females' ability are actually at a different level. So we believe that we have to give more education opportunities and training opportunities to the women at different levels, so that they would get better opportunities to successful businesses. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madame Dong. Very excellent empowerment and inclusiveness of the development of women's rights, as well as the practices you've been engaged.
Invite Ms. Li Ye. So she's the vice president of Merck China. So perhaps you have the floor, Ms. Li Ye.
Thank you, CCG,
and Merck is a high-tech company with 350 years of history, which is dedicated on science and technology innovations, providing scientific advices to the decision maker, health of women and healthy economy. This is advice that we've been given to our government, which is in cooperation with the whole industries and other companies together with the government, so that the women and the household supported by the women can be supported by the community as a whole. In 2018, in APAC, a meeting, this program is initiated. After that, a lot of countries and organizations are also on board. For the healthy economy, the programs can play its role as a promoter. At the same time, the female can enjoy equal opportunity and access to the medical health care. There are some very good and successful programs that can be shared with you, especially for those infertile population. And in 2014, with another organization, we've initiated the Baby Foundation. This is the first of its kind, giving care to the household development and family development, especially for the couple with infertility, and providing their medical care advices and counseling, and to help them to participate in 2 different campaigns of education and promotion. And altogether, 2,000 sisters or the women have received the funds from this organization. Altogether, the fund in total is about 20 million yuan, covering the different hospitals in the different cities. The households benefit from this program. About 300 plus babies have been born after this program initiated. And Healthy Moon and Healthy Economy program, in this program, we're also discussing on the engagement and also the difficulties of the engagement of the female into the job opportunities and doing business. For example, the gender-based discrimination, we're discovering some of the corporates, this kind of philosophy are still yet to be eradicated. Probably that is due to some reasons, and I hope that this kind of campaigns can be promoted across these different sectors and the different silos, especially when it comes to the HR recruitment and in terms of the training, also in terms of the communication between the bosses and the subordinates. The respect has to be honored. At the same time, the female leaderships is expanding further and further in China. And they're developing themselves in terms of the size and in terms of the proficiency. So diversification as a philosophy and a principle has to be carried out. I believe in this regard, we need to engage a long-term reform and changes. And we have set up the diversified cultures and caring for diversity.
Women talent in Asia Pacific.
We also have women talent in Asia Pacific, etc. We have such women groups to explore what men leaders can do to support women leaders, and we have formed pair partnerships, and that is very conducive for the improvement of gender perspectives. And in our company, women account for more than 50%, so they are half of the sky. And both women and men are working very hard. And the women leaders account for a higher ratio than the average, than the global average. Our company has been a very good example of women being an important part of the leadership. I've been working with Merck since 2013. I have been working with many departments of the company, and I have enjoyed a lot of opportunities for training and studying with a lot of support of time and funding. And we also work together with the women leaders in Germany and the United States at the headquarters. And they gave us a lot of guidance about how to achieve a balance between family and work. Finally, I want to say that President Xi Jinping at the 25th anniversary of the International Women's Conference said that the Chinese women have been braving the challenges with great courage and commitment and dedication. They have contributed to the security of the motherland. And he also said that we want to build a world free of discrimination against women, but still we have a long way to go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Li Ye. I think you've made very good points, and you give us your own company's examples. You have also talked about your personal examples. Those examples all point to the fact that women can be very well connected with sustainable development. There is a lot to be achieved.
Jenny, 要不你讲一讲这个从你的角度。So.
特别谢谢辉耀理事长和
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang Huiyao. Thank you, Madam Mei Baomiao. I want to thank the UN Women for the invitation to I'm also very glad to have this opportunity to share with you, talking about gender equality and climate change. We know that gender equality is an accelerator for climate actions. I have seen a lot of representatives from the UN agencies, think tanks, and the academia. These are wonderful women represented here. Actually, women have been mostly affected by climate change, especially in developing countries. Women and girls have been particularly vulnerable. It's not because of the innate elements of women or girls. It's because of the imbalanced development of different countries and regions. And it is also because of the inequalities in political, social, and educational fields. That has created the unequal experiences for women. And I also believe that women have a lot to do in climate actions. Because of some traditional perspectives, women have a different evaluation of risks from men. Usually women will put communities and families first, while women are pursuing opportunities of education. They also need to work even harder than men to get the equal positions or power or opportunities to men. That is also true for businesses. We can see a lot of wonderful women representatives from the media community today too. For example, some of the women are in the executive committee or on the board of the company. And women's representation in the government cabinet is also very small. That is why we need to better implement the gender perspectives in our actions. And we also need to be aware of this fact. If we ignore the voices and recommendations and suggestions of women, the outcomes of any policies are not satisfactory. So we need to be careful. And also, in terms of sustainable development and global governance, I think I have the following 3 suggestions from the perspective of our company. We have been promoting sustainable development as an important part of our investment. As an investment institution, we pay much attention to low carbon operations, the diversity of the management and the staff. We also pay much attention to the training and reskilling of the staff. And we also encourage the individual employees to participate in our company's charity work. And we are making investment not only about investment. It's not only just about investment. We also pay much attention to compliance, to inclusiveness, etc. Because time is limited, I will have to skip some of my speeches. MSA Capital is not just a signing party of the UNPRI. We have also signed IOPA, Institutional Limited Partners Association. We are the first diversity in action signing party. So as an investor and as a woman entrepreneur, we in China are facing a lot of innovations in technology. We are committed to diversity, inclusiveness, and equality between men and women. I also hope that the interpreter cannot hear anything now. We hope that we can encourage all to give more opportunities so that women will really enjoy equal opportunities for career and educational development. Thank you very much for your sharing. And I appreciate your commitment to low carbon development, environmental protection, and sustainable development. And now I'd like to invite Roberta Lipson, from United Family Hospital.
Thank you so much for including me in this panel and allowing me to hear from our previous speakers who've really opened my ears to the importance of gender inclusion, equality, and female empowerment in climate sustainability. It's something I hadn't thought a lot about before. But what I have thought a lot about before, and I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity to speak about, is the importance of multi-stakeholder cooperation in the effort toward that women inclusion and empowerment. As we've heard from some of the other speakers, the roots of inequality are so deep in our cultural traditions that neither industry or government or NGOs could go about changing this alone, and we really need to work together. So if you look at industry, this idea of diversity and inclusion should be a no-brainer. In 2020, McKinsey came out with a report that said that companies with the highest level of female leadership do better overall financially and in their results than all of their peers. So that should be a no-brainer. But in fact, of the Fortune 500 companies, only 8% of the CEOs or presidents are women. So don't they get it? Are they thinking too short-sightedly? Well, in my own industry of healthcare, it's a little bit easier because we have so many women who naturally are attracted to careers in nursing or even as doctors. And so we see that there's a preponderance on the lower levels of female participation, but among U.S. hospitals, only 19% of the leadership is female. I could tell you that in China, it's in fact much lower. But I'm very proud to tell you that of our 3,000 employees at United Family Healthcare, 60% of our doctors are women, 90-something% of our nurses are women, and 33% of our top leadership are women. So we're really, we really attribute, thank you, we really attribute our success to this power of diversity in leadership, not only gender diversity, but also ethnic and educational diversity. So I love the idea of spreading this idea to other companies. But for real equality to be spread across industry, all of the other industries, the government really has to take the lead. Because in China, if a young woman comes to the HR office applying for a job, what they see is that she's probably going to be pregnant in a couple of years, and she's going to take a 6-month to 12-month leave of maternity absence. And that means that women don't get the same opportunity as men in the entry-level careers. And so what I think needs to happen, you asked us to make one suggestion, I'm going to make 4. Okay? So what I think needs to happen is there needs to be legislated mandatory parental leave for both men and women. And it has to be enforced. Companies have to enforce it. Otherwise, the men are going to opt out. Sorry, but it's true. Secondly, women need to have control of the timing of their reproductive life. So if we want women to start their career and really participate in the economy, they can't be pressured to have babies before the age of 30. I didn't start having them till 36 and didn't finish till the age of 40. And, well, in China, unfortunately, you have to be married to freeze your eggs from a legal perspective. And I think it's super important for unmarried women to be allowed to freeze their eggs, so they have a choice of when to start their family. Thirdly, well, part of this is also there are not enough IVF centers in China. It's very difficult for a private facility to get an IVF license. But if you go to the public IVF hospitals, they're absolutely like overloaded, like train stations. So that's about reproductive rights. And then in terms of women's health, there's some good news. So last week at the Lianghui, the vice government of Hubei made a suggestion that there be universal testing for HPV provided by the government. This is amazing. So for the last 6 years, UFH and our foundation has been going to rural China with a unique approach to HPV screening and treatment. And I really believe that if the government does do universal screening, they have to think about doing treatment at the same time, because what we found in the rural areas, so many of the women who test positive get lost to further follow-up and treatment. So I would love for the government to reference our model going forward. And then finally, human trafficking. So there have been great models of partnership between government and industry, where they found that a lot of human trafficking happens in and through hotels, public transportation, airplanes, and they've been training hotel personnel to recognize what could be human trafficking. And I'm very happy also to say that just last week, the Beijing government has passed a regulation that hospitals and schools must report any apparently abused children, which is great, because in the past we've had trouble actually engaging the police on abused children issues. But there's not a similar rule for adult women, and police tend to avoid issues of family violence. And so I think that's something also that could really be beneficial. Finally, I think that our company, United Family Healthcare, and our patients benefit from our recognition of the benefits of equality and diversity, and we believe that all society would benefit from these further potential collaborations between government and industry.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, yeah, I think you speak well and give all those good points, but particularly your recommendation and 4 recommendations. And you talk about 8% CEO women, but you are one of the 8%. But I also, you emphasized the human trafficking. I think that was a hot topic recently, and this is really we need to emphasize that it's not allowed and not tolerated, and we should really do all the means possible to stop that. So now we have Margaret Lin. She's the chairman of Asia Pacific of also Bank of America, China. So, Margaret.
Okay. Yeah, by the way, I go to United Family Hospital every other day, so thanks to CCG and UN Women for organizing and inviting. I'm very delighted to be here and to share and discuss global climate and gender equality related SDGs. I would like to really address this issue from my micro level and especially from the financial sector's perspective. First, we all agree global climate measures and gender equality are becoming extremely important in global sustainable growth. We did our first survey related with gender equality and ESG at our 2017 Investor Relations Conference, which showed only 5% of the company stock are held by global climate and gender equality and ESG aware investors. Today, about half of the institutional investors and the individuals who take these important issues into consideration when they make investment decisions. Today, every $3 out of $10 in the global equity inflows basically land in ESG and gender equality and the climate measure related fund. So which is become extremely important and extremely focused. And in 2011, we basically only have 20% of S&P 500 companies published sustainability reports. And today, more than 92% of the company of the S&P 500 companies publish sustainability report. And most importantly, here comes Generation Z, which are born in 1996 to 2006. They are entering into workforce. They're going to be the largest population, reach about 2.5 billion people, and in human history. And they are going to be wealthiest generation. And basically, in addition to their entering into workforce, and the older generation are passing along the wealth. So they will represent 27% of the global income by 2030, which is 33 trillion US dollars. With this group, they pay more attention to gender equality. They pay more attention to sustainable growth, and they pay more attention to global climate measures, and they pay more attention to all SDG-related issues. So with them, with their focus, with their in charge in the workforce, and with their entering into investment community and take in charge, we basically has a slogan to say, believe in Generation Z and believe in smart capital, which ESG-related climate change measures and all the gender equality improvement will arrive sooner than we expected. So which is a good news. So the second point I would like to make is we partner together. So as we all agree, it is very critical to further address and better tackle ESG and global climate and gender equality related issues. And as a woman, we can leverage the power and relationship with multi-stakeholders to advance gender equality. On this front, I would like to share some examples of what we Bank of America are doing, just to give you some inspiration. First, we are very committed in investing in women by hiring and recruiting diverse talent to ensure strong representation in our workforce. Second, we provide access to our products and services, which is designed to meet the different needs of our diverse client base. Around about 40% of our small and medium business clients are women, so which is our very important client base. And also our financial advisors are committed to listen and learn from female clients to better help them with financial goals, with their financial objectives. The third point I would like to make is we basically encourage entrepreneurship. We partner with, through the partnership, we have empowered 75,000 women in 141 countries and to help them to start business and to be an entrepreneur. And then also we are providing millennials, which defined born in the 1980s to 2000, to give them ways to start the path of home ownership through our partnership with Her Agenda, which is an organization and digital media platform that works to bridge the gap between the ambition and achievement for millennial women. And also we continue to support diversity through arts. And we are basically highlighted the contribution of women artists through programs like Masterpiece Moment, our art conservation, and art in our communities programs. So which has brought a lot of women artists into the spotlight and give them strong support. Lastly, on our examples is we continue to provide philanthropic grants in our communities where we live and work. So far in 2021, we directed more than 262 million focused on the economic mobility as part of our overall philanthropic givings, basically of 370 million. So lastly, actually, I would encourage every stakeholders to make your effort on advancing gender equality related SDGs, because the benefit brought by gender equality will be beyond our imagination. Basically, A diverse workforce attracts talents, and also diverse leaders are more likely to create an environment where new and creative ideas are considered. As we all know, Harvard Business Review did a research showed women are better leaders during crisis, which is extremely important, especially in today's environment. And the female leaders express more awareness of fears that followers might be feeling, so concern of well-being and confidence in their plans. A 2020 research examined a data of set of more than 1,000 large companies in 15 countries and found that were 36% companies more likely outperform on profitability if they focus on gender equality and the climate issues. So if we achieve gender equality in business growth, we could boost we could boost domestic GDP about 2 to 3%, which represent about $2 trillion US. So with all that, I will pause and then basically leave the thoughts is we all need to contribute and to improve and to basically make effort to improve the gender equality, to improve the climate measures. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Margaret. I think for your excellent also, speech as well. Shared all the good practice, but also you have proposed many good, successful achievement that you have done on achieving gender equality and also sustainable development. Thank you again. Now, last but not least, and we have Miranda Wong, Managing Director of ETS China, one of our youngest entrepreneur, businesswoman today, actually. So, Miranda, please.
Thank you, CCG. At this very special moment and a very special day, I'm the only representative on behalf of education sector to be here attending today's seminar. I'd like to share with you 2 points. Education, gender equality, and climate are intertwined with each other. So first of all, let's take a look at the gender and equality of education opportunities. At the national level, we believe we have to put into more representation of the gender equality on education opportunity. A lot of girls are deprived of their rights and access to education. They are highly pressed and highly stressed. More versus boys. According to research, in terms of the motivations for education, girls have more motivation to get education, but due to the family reasons and due to many background reasons and costumes reasons, most of they have more reasons to abandon or give up in education. So we have to initiate the measures and the policies giving more considerations to gender equality to support to the girls, to guarantee during the 9 elementary and secondary school years, girls' education right can be guaranteed. So next, I'd like to talk about the climate change actions. My thoughts about the gender equality. I believe education is something when we are training and giving rights to the next generation. Education plays a very critical role in the course of the civilization. Education represents dignity, empowerment, and the generational improvement. Let's take a look at the climate change related education and the different trajectories of the different countries. Different countries have different levels and degrees of the education in terms of climate change. So in some of our country areas, they have set up the curriculum dedicated in climate change. According to the UNICEF report, half of the countries in the world didn't initiate any or mention anything about climate change in their education. So in terms of the mitigation and addressing climate issues, there are 2 areas that we can do from education area. First of all, education can make up for the gap or dividend of a divide of the knowledge in terms of climate change in education system. So the education actually can capitalize on the materials from the climate change to talk about the fairness of the rights, access to, for example, the female farmers. if we can promote education among the female farmers, that they can avoid some of the disasters or natural disasters from the extreme weathers, and that they can protect themselves, that they can protect their own physical security as well as the food security on the farmland. And the second, for the young people, so we can create more opportunities for them to know the measures about the climate change mitigation and addressing these issues, to know the broad scale of the policies and measures from the national level, and they can enjoy more opportunities of their career in the future, of course. Also, innovation can build up the society which is featuring clean energies and a smart city with more wisdoms and upgraded skills. And it is our sincere hope that the government, the think tanks, and enterprises can generate and stimulate the entrepreneurships for the youngsters, especially the entrepreneurs. They can be focused on addressing their own issues and problems. So we would not only rely on the government or some the high-tech centers like Silicon Valley's type high-tech centers to address the issues. And we have the solutions from the farmland, from the different cities, from the different levels of the areas, including the different farm fields, from the farmers. And the diversity of the wisdoms and knowledge has to be blooming together, and they can be circulating in the same area, in the same country, and we can focus on the different knowledges addressing the specific issues. And the new generations, they probably have more high education versus the older generation, so they will be more focusing and caring more about their own emissions. So I think probably this philosophy and ideas of the emission reductions and abatement should be included into the education in the schools so that they can be ready for the future change. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely.
Thank you very much.
This disparity between girls and the boy in terms of discrimination against their education. So that is really, I think, it's a long-term objective for not only for China, but also for many parts of the world. I think we need to strengthen that. So 讲得非常好，就是这个教育，我觉得教育的。
You made a very good point. Education equity, especially education for girls and women, should be improved.
Because we don't have much time to get into further discussion due to the time limit, but actually it's an excellent discussion we had just now, and the sixth businesswoman actually, very top leadership position of our respective industry, have given very good analysis, their share of their practice, and also give very concrete recommendations, which has, I think, largely enriched our discussion today that CCG had with the UN Women. That I think we have on this International Women's Day, we are having this live event with multi-stakeholders, exactly purpose, and then we had such a rich and productive discussion, and generally so many meaningful discussions and recommendations, particularly the international perspective, with great China focus. So this is really great. I think we have, as a think tank, we have a lot of things to learn, to benefit. So thank you. I'm finished my duty now. We'll pass to the final conclusion of our two hosts today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wong. Oh, am I the first one? Okay. Thank you so much. We have come to the conclusion. First of all, let me extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Wong for stepping in to moderate. It's always here, and all the speakers and panelists who have shared very useful, practical, insightful information, good practices, and concrete recommendations. As I said in the very beginning, I was hoping that we would walk away with some consensus around critical actions that we take forward. And if I can just spend a minute, because I know we're running really out of time, just summarizing what I heard is that, yes, we heard women and girls are vulnerable because of the type of job they do in terms of climate context. They are vulnerable to climate shocks. But what we heard more is that there is real talent and potential to make sure we're fully capitalizing women's ability in leadership roles, at community level, in private sector, in innovation, in financing, in terms of really making sure their voice, agency, and participation is really at the forefront of climate change agenda. And how do we do that? I heard 5 things. First, the political will. We heard from multiple participants and speakers, and of course from the ambassador from Rwanda, how important that was for Rwanda case. But we also, I think it's also true for Finland and as well as for Sweden. That political will then needs to be translated into concrete tools, because without which then we cannot implement. The tools, capacities, and budget. I heard from multiple speakers how important the budget to actually implement these commitments are so important. One thing that was a recurrent voice was around promoting women's voice, choice, and safety. But how do we do that? And we agreed that it requires addressing a range of issues women face. It is true, there is pre-existing gender equality in the current context we work. So we cannot just start from women where they are now. We have to have a level playing field. For that, we need to make sure women have access to better education, better information, better capacities. They are supported for skilling, upskilling, access to technology. So that is a must. In addition to that, the other is the social intervention. Because of the care work, because of gender violence at home, because of lack of access to health services, for many structural issues, we call for paternity leave, making sure we have leave not just for wives, also for a male spouse, but also for a female spouse, both of the parents. We call for a number of things that need to be addressed in terms of social norm change. I mean, this is what we say in UN Women. In order to do all of this, of course, the data and research is very, very important, and I don't want to go more into it because we spoke quite a lot about. And finally, the role of the multi-stakeholder partnership, how critical that is to push both the climate change agenda as well as the agenda of gender equality across all pillars. And here we heard from our private sectors and philanthropies on the role they play, not just at the corporate level, in corporate world, but also from a philanthropic for social and economic development of the country. With that, thank you once again for being here today, for sharing your insight, and to CCG. I cannot thank enough Dr. Miao, Dr. Henry, and the whole team for hosting, for partnering, for shaping the entire agenda. I am pleased to announce that CCG and UN Women will work together on series of dialogues on critical global issues related to gender equality as well as those relevant to China. So this is the first one in our series, and please do join and participate in the future ones. Thank you, and I hand over to you.
First of all, thank you, Miranda. You did a great conclusion. And, happy International Women's Day again to our girls, ladies. This is afternoon, but I think every day is Women's Day in the future. I'm so proud of you, the ladies, girls, and our gentlemen support women community very well. And today we heard about so many voices from ladies, from gender perspective, even from the gentlemen to support the international women job. And actually, like as Miranda mentioned, we would like to offer a venue, offer a platform to gather the people from different sectors, diversified sectors, to have the consensus on the biodiversity and climate change from the gender perspective. Sometimes from my bottom heart, I believe the gender issue is not just about the equality, the fairness. It's about we should touch on the hardcore issues, those global governance affairs like the biodiversity and climate change, those global governance affairs. That is the female leadership as well. This is quite important thought from my own perspective. Secondly, is that in the future, CCG would like to, shoulder by shoulder with UN Women, with Miranda's leadership, we can do some serious events on continue our female leadership issue, on continue our gender issue. That is very important angle to deliver our points, deliver our thoughts on global governance. Sometimes CCG initiated a lot of events in international community, including the trade, multilateralism, and a lot of those global governance issues. But gender angle and the gender perspective in the future, it will be the crucial part of our gender setting up. And finally, thank you all of you. Thank you all our speakers. Today we are invited so many important figures from different sectors, from, of course, from central government, from international organizations, from different countries share your important experience. It's quite important for international community to share the same topic. And people from business community, from academia, thank you all very much. And International Women's Day, look forward to we have more occasions like this. Happy International Women's Day again. Thank you. And